Hey, I'm Sawyer with Adventech. This is our CEO, Charlie Williams. I'm the licensing specialist here, and we're going to be going over the top 10 ways to overspend on Microsoft licensing. So this is going to be our agenda. We're going to go ahead and timestamp each of these so that you can follow along accordingly. And if you want to skip to one or go back to one, we'll make it easy to do that.
First way to overspend is to have an EES agreement when a CSP makes sense. I know that was a lot of letters, but an EES agreement is an enterprise enrollment solution where you buy based on your full-time employee enrollment. There's certain minimums. And because you have to buy for your full-time employees, it usually means you're buying for people who aren't even using Microsoft. So think of the CSP as more of an a la carte solution where you only buy licenses for the users that are using Microsoft operating systems, apps, things like that. And EES can be great because it can give you an overall about 15% discount on your user licenses. But we have had several scenarios where people are buying 50% more licenses, 30% more licenses even than they need to buy. So the discount kind of gets wiped out when you're buying more licenses than you need. So have a conversation with us or an EES provider and figure out whether or not that makes sense.
So the next one's going to be M365 when O365 a la carte is more cost effective. M365 is going to offer a comprehensive bundle of tools. It always will include Words, Teams, Windows, robust security features with downloadable apps. Office 365 plus add-ons. So if you're getting like Office 365 A1, sometimes it's cheaper than M365, especially if you're a Chromebook school. You don't need the management console, the operating system. Adding those add-ons, downloadable apps, whatever it is you want, maybe some of the security features, maybe Entra ID, that can sometimes be more cost effective than just getting M365 as the whole bundle and whole toolkit. So we can always do a tailored assessment. We can always ask what your needs are, what your students use, what your teachers use, and do a comparison overview and figure out what's best for your school.
O365 when MS Apps is enough. So this is not the M365 license Sawyer was just talking about. It's Microsoft 365 apps. We call it MS Apps for short, just to not confuse those two. So think of Office 365 as the full Office suite plus 40 free student licenses for one faculty license. Now that's a heck of a deal, especially if you have student-wide adoption of Microsoft in your school. But if you don't, the MS Apps license, and just to give you kind of an idea of pricing, MSRP on the M365 is about $69. O365 is about $39, and the MS Apps is about $27 per user annually. It is a user license, and it only gives you 15 free student licenses per faculty license. And think of it as sort of Office Standard versus Office Pro. It's not all the Office apps, but most of the Office Standard apps. So that may be enough. I think this is the most slept on, unknown user license out there, and it could be a great way to save a ton of money per user in your district.
Yeah, so we see this one pretty commonly, A3 licenses for all instead of mixing with A1. So A3, it's a paid license. It's going to include all the desktop applications, full cloud capabilities, advanced security features. A1 is going to be the free cloud-only access for students and teachers. Still comes with, all the main apps, Word, PowerPoint, Docs, things like that, but without the additional cost. So what a lot of people do is they'll just get A3, they'll buy them for the whole school, they'll buy 800 licenses, they think everyone needs to use it. But A3 is really going to be more for your power users, IT admins, maybe they're working remote, they're working rural, they need the downloadable apps. So if you don't need downloadable apps, which is, the most important thing about A3, a lot of times mixing and matching with A1, where you're going to have 99% uptime and the internet, A1 will suffice. Get those for your students, some of your teachers, mix and match with some A3, save yourself some money along the way.
I think a lot of folks don't even realize you can still buy device licensing, and we'll talk about another kind of licensing you can still do. User licenses are great when you've got widespread adoption. Everybody's using Microsoft and you want to have that Entra ID to authenticate your users. I mean, it's great, but a device license for a primarily Apple district, primarily Chrome district, will save you a lot of money because you probably just have pods. You've got these couple users in finance and maybe in some staff. Maybe you've got a keyboarding classroom, a Microsoft Office classroom that has those devices. User licensing is great, and keep in mind you can put up to 5 different devices per user license. So a user license is a great deal if you have users that are regularly using Microsoft. But if it's just a one-time use case in this room or this person or this device, you probably want to look at device licensing as an option. You can still do it, believe it or not.
Yeah, so Office Pro, when Office Standard meets needs, we actually went through this one recently. So the main difference between Office Pro and Office Standard is that Pro is going to come with Access and Publisher. So Access if you need a relational database, or Publisher if you're doing newsletters, flyers, brochures, school newspaper, anything like that. That's going to be where you would want Pro. Otherwise, in every other case, Office Standard is going to come with the same apps, and will do just as good. So we can always assess your software needs, see what you're actually using, what you need. We can do a feature comparison, but a lot of times people like the word pro and they think, there's something more to it, but it's just Access and Publisher.
I don't want to be standard. I want to be pro, but not when it comes to spending on licensing. Annual licensing with perpetual licenses are more cost effective. So again, this is the other category of things people don't realize you can still do. Everybody thinks that Microsoft's gone exclusively to annual licensing for users. There's still device licensing and there's still perpetual licensing options. I'm talking about devices first, right? So you can do a device Office license, or obviously an operating system license that just sort of carries out until the life of that product has really served its purpose, right? So if you don't need to get the latest and greatest all the time, the other place where this shows up is server licensing, right? So when you get on an EES agreement, you can get your server licenses on an annual contract. Maybe that makes sense if you're doing a lot of server updates all the time. Most schools, districts we talk to are not doing that. So if you're not refreshing your servers and your server OS every 4 years, then paying for annual server licensing is definitely overspending. And a perpetual license option is still available even for your server licensing.
Paying for unneeded reseller support SKUs. This happens probably more than we would like to see. So support SKUs, they'll actually, a lot of the resellers will bundle these support SKUs in. It'll inflate the overall licensing costs. If you have a strong internal IT team and you guys are proficient with your in-house departments, you probably don't need the additional support. If you're paying for it, you've probably never even called to ask them any questions, get any help. This happens pretty often because they'll kind of hide the SKU. It'll just look like something miscellaneous. You might think it's something Microsoft. You might think it's something Google. It's really important to do a full licensing agreement to go over every SKU to make sure everything is itemized. Because if you see anything that doesn't look familiar, doesn't look like it should be there, it very well could be this reseller support SKU. So we can always work with you. We can do a cost comparison. We could do an audit if you choose. If we see anything like that, we could help you save some money. This is definitely something that you don't want to be paying for if you don't need it and you never use it.
Accidentally paying for perpetual licenses annually. Okay, this doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen because, again, folks don't realize that there are still perpetual license options. And we have seen folks paying for perpetual Office licenses for devices specifically annually when you don't need to do that. Or again, even people not realizing that there are perpetual license options. So again, this is one of the things I really hate to see. You should have a couple options. You should have an annual option, which is typically about a third of the cost, maybe a quarter of the cost of a perpetual license. If you went to annual licensing, and let's say years ago with your Microsoft partner, and the cost of the annual license was still the same as what you were buying for perpetual licenses, you may be doing this thing right here. And unfortunately, we've stumbled across a few customers who are doing this.
Yeah, and then overbuying server licenses in virtual machine scenarios. So this one's going to be a little more complicated. Server licensing in general is going to be more complicated. The big one is the confusion in license requirements. Purchasing a license for each virtual machine can present costly mistakes, especially in diverse computing environments. Non-Windows VM solutions, so there is no requirement for non-Windows VMs like Linux to have those server licenses from Windows. So that is a big opportunity to trim unnecessary expenses. Another one is if you do have Windows VMs, they will actually aggregate the cores utilized. which can minimize the total required licenses and save you some money there as well. We can always do a comparison of your licensing models. We can always, have a conversation with you, see what kind of VMs you're using. There is some really good ways to save some substantial money optimizing your server licenses. You don't just have to buy a license for each server. You don't, just have to buy licenses for Linux. So there's some good opportunities to save you some money there.
Hey, this is Charlie and Sawyer with Advent Tech. Our motto is we educate, we sell tech. I hope that you've learned something interesting here, and I hope that you stop overpaying for Microsoft licensing, and we'll see you on the next video.